Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune is in Cleveland in the aftermath of the Bears' 20-17 loss to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns rally from a 17-7 fourth quarter deficit. The Bears blow another double-digit fourth quarter lead. Dan, they're now 5-9 instead of being 6-8. And then had they won this game, had they held on to that lead, we could have a very different conversation. Instead, it will sound very familiar because the Bears found a way to lose another winnable game.
David, I've been in some dispirited locker rooms over my time on this beat. I've been in some dispirited locker rooms this season. I'm not sure I've been in one that was this shocked, this stunned, this in disbelief at what happened late in this football game today. The Bears weren't necessarily playing their best brand of football, but they were playing tough. They were being opportunistic. Defense was carrying the day. And then to see it all slide away in the fourth quarter with a defense that had been really, really good for most of the day, allowing Joe Flacco to throw for 212 passing yards in the fourth quarter, it blows your mind. And then, as you know, the game ends with a Hail Mary in the lap of Darnell Mooney. And somehow, instead of securing a storybook catch that would have kept a potential storybook run going, he bobbles it and kicks it up into the air where a Brown safety intercepts it. I leave here tonight just thinking that maybe this was just a timely reminder that this team isn't there yet, and they're a long way from there yet, and this climb is really steep, and losses like this, as much as they hurt, should provide you a reality check.
I do think that's the big takeaway. I do think that after the last couple of weeks, it was fun. I mean, there was a lot of fun in celebrating the way they beat the Lions and they survived the Vikings. And boy, if they could get 3 in a row, they could get, 6 in a row to end the season. And then what? I think that was fun. But this was a reality check. This was, a team that doesn't know how to finish and certainly defensively played at a very high level, looked like a top 5 defense for 3 quarters. Joe Flacco did what clutch quarterbacks do when they're veteran and they're savvy and they know all the things, that he found a way to make the throw and he made things happen. That throw, when you look at that pass, a 51-yard touchdown to Amari Cooper, he threw the ball and all of that was based on faith and experience.
Yeah.
He threw it to a spot and he knew that Amari Cooper might be there. He might not be there, but the chances are if he is there, something good is going to happen. You can't really, if you don't have that, you're not going to have that. He's 38 years old. He's been around forever, and he just willed this Browns team to a victory in a game they should not have won.
Well, David, that's one of 2 throws in the fourth quarter that guys on the Bears defense are going to be replaying in their nightmares on Sunday night and into Monday and into Tuesday and into Wednesday. That play in particular, there's a triangle of defenders. It's Brisker, it's Edmonds, it's Terrell Smith, and somebody there has got to make a better play on the football. Matt Eberflus said after the game that ball was in the air long enough for someone to, at the very least, deflect it. As in a best case scenario, you intercept it. Instead, Amari Cooper has it in his hands, and he's running the last 27 yards into the end zone for a game-tying touchdown that led you to believe that the Bears are losing this game, right? Like they're just not able to make those plays when they matter the most. The other one that was crushing on the Browns' game-winning field goal drive in the fourth quarter was 3rd and 15 from Flacco to David Njoku. It covers 34 yards, and it comes with the Bears sending a 6-man pressure that left Justin Jones backpedaling into coverage and David Njoku getting behind him for what ends up being the catch that pushes the Browns into field goal range. There was some heavy regret, I think, among the Bears defenders in the locker room about that play. Justin Jones did not seem all that thrilled about having to play coverage on that play. Obviously, Matt Eberflus explains that the pressure there, you're hoping for Flacco to get rid of the ball quick and then to tackle the ball underneath. Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon, and Tremaine Edmonds are all running in as blitzers on that play, and Flacco retreats enough to see what he needs to see and loft it over the top of a 308-pound defensive tackle, and the rest is history.
You know how it works when you talk about Matt Eberflus and the defensive improvements on his watch, that when you think about all of the good, that one play, the image of Justin Jones flailing around trying to cover a world-class tight end down the field is going to stand out and burn an indelible image in your memory and that's going to outweigh a lot of the good. I don't know how they got in that situation. I don't know how you get in that situation, especially in the fourth quarter. But there he was, number 93, trying to chase Njoku down the field, and Flacco made the pass, and then Njoku did the rest after the catch, and he had a big day. He had the toe tap touchdown. He had that big play.
10 catches.
10 catches. 10 catches for a tight end that the Bears didn't find a way to stop. As good as their defense was on occasion, Montez Thread has 3 sacks. They have 3 takeaways. They lead the turnovers. But, Dan, when they needed to stop, they couldn't make one.
It's frustrating because those 3 takeaways were all huge. Eddie Jackson gets the early interception and returns it to the 1 and gives the offense the gift that it needed because the offense wasn't doing anything on its own this afternoon. And so you get a 1-yard touchdown drive for your offense. You get a pick 6 from Tremaine Edmonds in the third quarter, and you say, okay, thanks, defense. You're single-handedly scoring our points while keeping the points off the other team's scoreboard. And then maybe the play of the day, had the Bears won this game, was the Tyreek Stevenson interception.
Right. Great play. One
snap after the Bears gave the ball up on a muffed punt by Trent Taylor, and Tyreek Stevenson makes a tremendous play in zone coverage, uses his instincts, notices Njoku bending his route to the inside, says, I think that's where Flacco's going with the ball, and broke on it. And it's one of those plays that it seems heroic in the moment that it happens. And then you leave the stadium at the end of the night and you're going, it's not heroic, and it's just a footnote on another galling loss, the third this year, where the Bears had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter and couldn't finish. And so here we are in that same familiar refrain with a team that can't finish. And I think, David, those who were looking for questions or answers to the questions about the head coach and the quarterback probably got some resounding answers this afternoon, because neither of those guys did enough to help this team win a football game that it had to have.
We'll go through all this when we do our pod tomorrow and post it on Tuesday morning. But, Dan, just real quickly, when Matt Eberflus explained the decision at the end of the first half to take the chance at the Hail Mary coming through and the prayer being answered, rather than take the chance with a 55-yard field goal in difficult conditions, rain and wind, with Cairo Santos.
Yeah.
What did he say, and what did you think?
Well, look, he did explain that the line, they weren't to their kick line, and that's established in pregame. And I will tell you, I had a chance to be down on the field before the game. The wind was significant, and particularly in that direction, and the conditions were significant. And so I think 55 in this environment today was probably too much of an ask. You needed to get a bite a little bit more off there at the end. And that was a pretty good drive at the end of the half for them to cross midfield, get themselves in position, and then ultimately not come away with points is disappointing. But I didn't have a problem in that particular instance. I had a much bigger problem with a jet sweep to Tyler Scott on, was that 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1? It was basically a foot. And you run a jet sweep to a 185-pound receiver that gets stopped. And that's one of those moments where if I get it, the Browns have a good defense. Their front was nasty all day, but if you can't rely on a traditional running game to get you a yard with Justin Fields or Deontay Foreman or anyone else, that one stuck with me a little bit.
So there were other things that came up. I'm just curious about the post-game locker room that you described well, because you've been in so many of them. This one was a little different. Do you think it was partly because we spent the last two weeks talking about playoff possibilities, and this team might be bought into that idea, and Cole Kmet and DJ Moore was like, okay, if we could win out, we could do this? Was the realization setting in at that point?
I think it was 100% related to that. Eddie Jackson was the first guy I talked to in that locker room, and he needed a good 3 minutes slumped in the back of his locker stall to gather himself to even be able to talk. Like, he was fighting heavy emotion. And I think a lot of it, David, was this idea that they were playing a more competitive brand of football, that they did have a test today against a depleted Browns team that would have given them further momentum and further belief going into a stretch of the schedule that the next couple of weeks, it's a lower degree of difficulty. And so you were staring at the runway for takeoff, and then to play as well as they did defensively for 3 quarters, to have a double-digit lead on the road with the brand of defense that they were playing. You're 45 minutes of real time away from the most joyous return flight to Chicago that you could imagine. And then you leave with that just crushed feeling in your stomach. And it was very real to see that on the faces of these players, to hear it in the voices of these players. This was a gut punch. I wrote in my column for ChicagoTribune.com, the NFL's 24-hour rule doesn't always apply. It's not a one-size-fits-all remedy, and this one's going to linger. It's going to sting.
Let's talk about the quarterbacks. We talked about Flacco and the 212 yards passing in the fourth quarter, making the plays in the clutch. Justin Fields also, in fairness, had an opportunity to make plays in the clutch. They got the ball back with 34
Twice.
seconds to go, and then before that, he had another opportunity. And when we evaluate where he's going and what he's capable of, Dan, I don't think that we can ignore this. I don't think that it's all on him with protection and weapons and all of that and Getsy. But I don't think that you can always try to look for excuses or rationalizations for why this isn't working. He's not. I'm not going to say it's not working. Let's say after 36 starts, he remains a work in progress, and that reality is probably answering the question that everyone is asking: is he the guy that you can win because of in a game like this? Today you just didn't.
19 for 40 passing.
Yeah,
one touchdown drive, and it was a 1-yarder. Right, a 1-yard touchdown drive. That was all you could muster in a gotta have it game with the stakes that were here today. You talk about the getting the ball back with 34 seconds left. Well, look, after Amari Cooper scored the game-tying touchdown, there were 3 minutes and 8 seconds left, and the offense had the ball again. Okay, this is response time. This is where great quarterbacks, or even above average franchise quarterbacks, make their money. It's where they stamp their legacy. You get the ball and you go down and you score. What did the Bears do? They went 3 and out in a matter of a minute and 18 seconds, I think it was, or a minute and 20 seconds, somewhere around there. 3 and out. There's a toss play to Khalil Herbert that loses yards. There's a deep shot to Darnell Mooney that doesn't connect. And then there's a check down to Roschon Johnson that gets 3 yards. And so, like, this isn't the first time we've been in this situation. I just leave here like asking myself, at what point has Justin Fields elevated this offense? At what point has Justin Fields elevated a number of guys in this offense to new levels? At what point has Justin Fields elevated this team? And as you mentioned, we're 35 starts into this, and there have been countless opportunities with the game on the line, with the score tied or the Bears behind by 3 or whatever it may be, to go lead those drives that tell the world that you are for real as a quarterback that can seize those moments. They're rarely seized. There's one game-winning drive in Minnesota with the pass to DJ Moore. Otherwise, there's a ton of disappointment and a ton of missed opportunities and a ton of excuses for why it doesn't happen. But Ryan Poles was sitting right behind us in the press box today. I just can't imagine him watching this football game today and doing anything more than a gigantic leap of faith to put all your chips behind Justin Fields going forward from here.
Were you in the locker room when DJ Moore was talking? Were you around his locker when he was talking? I
was not. I was in the locker room, but I was with the defensive side of the guys when he was talking.
Okay, no, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious because there's a lot coming out of the locker room, as there always is. And Courtney Cronin had an exchange with some out-of-town reporters asking DJ Moore about the quarterback situation, and him saying that basically, I don't think that Drake May or Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields because it had reached that level of discussion apparently. And there's a lot.
I would say that about my good friend too.
Yeah, exactly. He's your teammate. You have 3 more games to go with him, and he's been a big reason why you've had success this year because of that chemistry. I think that if there's a Bears player that doesn't support Justin Fields in the final 3 weeks or this season, that would be news, and you wouldn't expect it because the one thing you come across or come out with even a game like this, you respect the toughness of Justin Fields. He takes hits, keeps coming back. The hit at the end of the first half, it was awkward, and he got banged up pretty good, and then he comes back and he answers the call. That's never going to be the question about Justin Fields. It's always going to be like, can he make the pass? Can he hit the receiver when he needs, who's open on a drive you have to have? Today, that didn't happen.
Anyone who's watched the NFL for more than 2 years understands that these games come down to the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, your quarterback has to be a efficient and productive passer to win football games. Justin Fields' fourth quarter stats during his career are not that. There are so many moments, as we just talked about, where the game is in his hands and he doesn't do anything with it. Today's another example. Justin Fields, the person, awesome dude. He should have the support of his teammates in the locker room. He is a tough-minded leader with incredible resolve and a spirit that you would want to rally behind. Any leader would be blessed to have some of the things in their genes that Justin Fields has. But this is a cutthroat league where you have to make cutthroat decisions to try to take your team to championship levels. And right now, you said it, 35 starts. We've seen 35 starts of evidence, and there has been improvement, but there is no indication that he's ever going to ascend above maybe the top 15, top 12 quarterbacks in the league, and his ability to take over games and win them. This is a team today in the Cleveland Browns that was beat up defensively. They're still really good, and you saw that all afternoon today. And I was eager for Justin to take this test, but go back to Tampa. You've got a blitz-heavy team that puts a lot of pressure on, and you don't respond. Go to Minnesota, the 2 games they played against them, blitz-heavy team, you don't respond. This group gets its pressure with its front four, and Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Anytime that you have a significant amount of pressure, the production lags. And what were the final numbers today? 19 for 40. I don't know what the final
166.
166. 166. That's not an outlier. It's not an outlier.
Yeah.
The quarterback of your football team doesn't get to 200 passing yards on a regular basis. And there are people say, well, add in the rushing stats. Well, what do we have in rushing stats today? 32, or somewhere around there. So we didn't even get to 200 total yards. And the bottom line is, look, like there have been opportunities, right? Like, you've had your opportunities, and it is where it is right now. And it's just hard for me to believe, with what's at stake for this franchise, that they would sit and take what I think would be a gigantic leap of faith to stick behind them.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, you have to have their standards higher than that. And I think that's the problem with the Bears, who guaranteed now for the 23rd time in the last 32 seasons, they'll not have a winning record. That, to me, is terrible for a charter franchise to have that tradition of losing. Dan, I wonder this also. We talked about what basically the conversation will be around Justin Fields this week. Around Matt Eberflus, I do wonder a couple things. Number one, the defense did give them a chance to win, so it's very difficult. You could still argue that defense is on the verge of something special. What Darnell Mooney said to reporters afterward about being lackadaisical in the third quarter and the offense becoming rather complacent, and those are the kind of things, in generalities, even if it's not true, I think you're going to stick with a coach who preaches about intensity and culture and all those things. What in the world could the Bears be possibly complacent about or lackadaisical over, leading a good team in the Browns on the road in the third quarter? That didn't make any sense, but it will come back and I think be used against Matt Eberflus when they talk about culture.
Yeah, and I don't know how much truth there is to it. If there was any semblance of complacency or comfortability from this offense that did nothing today, it would be astounding. And maybe it goes back to some of those conversations we had in the summer, where they were getting their lunch fed to them by the defense, and there were calls for juice from the offense, right? You remember those days at training camp when we were talking about who on this offense is going to be the alpha to supply the juice in that huddle when it's needed. If you had any level of complacency today in this game, with the stakes that were on the line, with the opponent you were playing, with the lead that you had, it's absolutely unforgivable and inexcusable. And the leaders of the football team have the answer for that. If it was indeed true, Justin Fields was asked about it, and I don't think he agreed with Darnell's assessment there. But the bottom line is this team just rarely finds the ability to go for the jugular, to get the knockout punch, to deliver in ways that allow you to say, okay, that's a team that should be taken seriously.
I just think people are grasping at straws and searching for answers that aren't easy to come by. So
that could be the case as well. Yeah.
That could be something like that. And we'll wrap this up. But I think overall, when you look at what happened to the Bears, I just think that, the Browns, they had backups for backups. They were down, you talk about injury situations. Yeah, theirs was worse than the Bears. The Bears might have been banged up, but not as badly as the Browns. The Browns found a way to win at home. Flacco earns $75,000 based on his new contract, and for every victory. And they're 9-5. The Bears fall to 5-9. The last 3 games are essentially playing out the string. Not sure what can be achieved by the final 3 games, but there will be plenty of conversation. I think that moving forward, you wonder about the offense, because it sure seems broken right now.
This was the 4th game-winning kick by Dustin Hopkins this season, and that's a indicator of a team that seizes its chances to win games late. That's been in a number of close games, and it has come out on the strong end of it. Kevin Stefanski deserves a lot of credit for holding this team together with all the injuries they've had to key big-time playmakers on their roster and still positioning them to seize a potential playoff berth. You watch teams around the league, David, that are depleted, that have issues, that are shorthanded, and they still find ways to win. And in Chicago, you watch a team that continues to find ways to lose, and then everybody makes excuses for why they're losing, and then searches for the fall guy to blame it on in particular. And so a lot of heavy decisions ahead for the Bears. We're going to get a beautiful late afternoon Christmas Eve game against the Arizona Cardinals. Like, who can't wait for that one, to kick off the holiday season? I know I'm looking forward to it, and that's the direction we'll go. Do you want a couple
3-word
reviews before we get out of here?
Yes, let's do that.
It wouldn't surprise you that Fire Luke Getsy is through this thread several times in here. I think that's an easy knee-jerk reaction, although I made my feelings very clear about that Tyler Scott jet sweep. John Saxa gives us Mooney drops extension, chance to be a hero, and it doesn't come on his way. Fire the coach. Matt Eberflus's job security is going to get a little thinner in the court of public opinion this week. Prasithi Lee gives us draft quarterback 2024. I think that's the direction that a lot of people are going to start to lean, given what we've seen here. Dan, reading is my thing, gives us typical Bears loss. Can't disagree with him there because we've had a lot of these. A few more here. 312 Sports Guy gives us Caleb and Ben. I like that one because that's a Christmas wish list, right? Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson to the Bears. That would be something that people in Chicago would like. Hey, Scott Anthony gives us kick to balls. I like that one. It expresses the feeling that a lot of Bears fans felt Sunday afternoon. A couple last ones here. Catch the ball. Don't drop it. And then 2 drop touchdowns. Don't forget about the Robert Tonyan miss early in the game on a deep shot that was there for the take.
Brutal. Is he walking home? Is he hitchhiking with Trent Taylor? I mean, both those mistakes were really, really bad.
Just things you can't have happen in a game like this.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we get out of here, did you hear your shout out on the Fox broadcast? That was very. I hope we can get audio of that. Maybe we can play it.
Well, Chris Tannehill's already pulled the audio, which is a great thing. The sound guy always is the guy you lean on for the sound, and he sent it to me because I was getting a lot of texts that I had been mentioned on a broadcast, and so
what's behind that?
I wrote a piece about Justin Fields in my storylines package, and I think one of the lines I had in there was that something about the first start here in Cleveland 2 years ago is definitely still a subplot to this entire return to Cleveland, and it'll likely be mentioned on the broadcast by Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez. And Kevin Kugler said, Dan Wiederer of the Tribune said we're going to mention it, so we're going to mention it. So apparently I've got a reading audience here, and Kevin Kugler, and he saw that. I'll have to reach out to him and thank him for the shout out because I was getting a lot of texts.
Kevin Kugler, a good Chicago guy.
I think he's going to be on the game next week as well, along with the Sanchez.
Well, he'll be in town for Christmas, and he can maybe by then we'll all be able to celebrate some type of Cubs signing because I think that he's a Cub fan, you're a Cub fan, so I figured he was just shouting you out. But that was nice. It was good to hear. Like, whoa, hey, they just gave Dan a shout out. Awesome. All right, we'll be back on Tuesday morning when we drop the Take the North podcast, and we'll look ahead and we'll look back and we'll evaluate the quarterback position and the latest speculation because that's what the final 3 weeks are all about as well. Anything else, Dan, before we go?
No, I'm really eager to kind of get into the rewatch of this in some ways and figure out what went wrong defensively in the fourth and then see if the offense had anything that they could have got going. The running game non-factor today, David. Justin Fields generated no momentum, and you walk out of here with that crushing feeling in your stomach. And I don't know how easy it is for this team to get back up given where this season is at and what's left in it. I think there's going to be a natural emotional letdown in week 16.
I think that's pretty accurate based on experience, and certainly from watching, I can understand why you'd come to that conclusion. All right, safe travels back. We'll drop this Tuesday morning podcast looking ahead. We appreciate you tuning in tonight to get our post-game reaction to the Bears' 20-17 loss that drops them to 5-9. And, oh, by the way, probably out of playoff contention. I don't know how realistic it ever was, but now this is reality smack dab in the face. Sorry about that, but it happened. 20-17 losers to the Browns, blow a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. This is what you get when you can't protect the lead. All right, that's enough from us. We'll talk to you on Tuesday morning. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.